Hello, Black Cannabis family. Jacques Howard here, the voice of Black Cannabis. Be sure to make sure that you follow us on our website, black-cannabis.com. We've got some interesting stuff we want to talk about today. I mean, I've kind of got perked up when I started having this thought about the interview, this segment, and being able to introduce you all to Rabbi James Kahn. But the CannAtlantic Conference, thank you all for partnering with Black Cannabis, and we're looking forward to sharing more information through the Black Cannabis platform. Now, as I alluded to, we have Rabbi James Kahn, who's going to share a bit about what he's doing and just a little bit of a bio. He is the National Director of Community Outreach for Holistic Industries. We're also going to talk about Liberty Rockville, the dispensary that was the first one he assisted in the opening of that as well. So without any further ado, Rabbi James Kahn, thank you so much for your time, sir.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Great. So let's get started first of all. And this is probably the thing that perked my ears up the most, was that you are a PK, pastor's kid, or a rabbi's kid. And so let's talk about your faith journey.
Yeah, it's a big part of why I'm here. I mean, well, there's a couple conversations we could have. You know, being a PK is, there's a that's a let's just say I think we put psychiatrists we keep them in business, because I think there's a whole bunch of challenges that are, especially if your dad or your mom is a pulpit rabbi or minister, because you're really on display and you're the focus, and you're subject to a lot of judgment from folks, which maybe prepared me for cannabis, because when I started coming out about my family, I actually followed my family into cannabis. Believe it or not, actually, the first person that ever asked me to get them cannabis was my grandpa, and I was maybe 14 or 15. My grandfather had MS. He was a vet. He had a really extremely serious case of MS, and at 35 he was diagnosed. By the time he was 40, he was totally bedbound. And when I knew him, he was really struggled a lot with pain and spastic, very shaky. And cannabis was one of the only things that helped him, and it really transformed my family, because once it's personal, once it's your family member who's struggling and nothing is helping them but cannabis, we became kind of devoted to getting him access to cannabis, and we became passionate about fighting for access to cannabis. So my family always was very much kind of a social justice bent. We were always had a cause. We were always, I remember protesting whether for abortion rights or a liberal cause, good liberal causes that my family raised us to believe in. But at some point it became clear that that access to cannabis was a social justice issue, and not just any social justice issue, but one that should be talked about and fought for by faith communities. And so we became very passionate about getting cannabis talked about, from pulpits, and I still remain passionate about that. I really do. To me, this is again, I tell Jews, when I'm talking to Jewish crowds, I say there's no mitzvah in suffering. God doesn't want us to suffer. So if cannabis brings relief, that's holy. That's a holy plant.
Fantastic. And I want you to touch on this briefly. How has the dialogue been regarding the people who are supportive and those who are not?
I mean, it's been pretty amazing how it's evolved. When I first, my family actually opened up a dispensary in DC. They started fighting for it about 10 years ago. I think it's 7 years now that it's been open. And at the beginning, I was scared to tell people, and I got some pushback, but these days it's almost universally positive. People are interested. They know a family member who's struggling with X or Y, and they want to know if it can be helpful. I just haven't encountered too much pushback in the last couple of years. It's been pretty it shows that we're making some progress and really normalizing this plant, which is good. I mean, it's amazing because there's just, I don't know if you saw that just a couple months ago, there was a report out. CNN covered it along with a lot of other folks about an archaeological site in Israel, a place called Tel Arad. It's in the Negev Desert in Israel, a couple-hour drive from Jerusalem. And it's a very much, it was an ancient, very temple, very similar to the one in Jerusalem. And it mimicked the same layout as the temple, the Great Temple in Jerusalem. And they were able to analyze the pillars outside of the holiest part of the temple, where actually people believe that God resided in this part of the temple, that was God's home on earth, is how the Jews at that time thought about it. And they were able, there was 2 pillars outside of this holy sanctuary. And they were finally able, they discovered it in the early 20th century, but they were finally able to analyze the residue that were on the pillars just a few months ago. And they found one of the pillars had frankincense, which was it is an incense and was used back then. And the other pillar had residue, clearly, of CBD and THC, along with some sort of cow dung, which would have made it burn kind of slowly and at a low enough temperature that it would have elicited a psychoactive response from the folks who were inhaling it. So it's amazing to me that some of the earliest history of the Judeo-Christian kind of the Western tradition was founded, had some use of cannabis in that tradition. So to me, it's connecting dots all the way back. And that's been pretty astounding. And I love telling that story to faith leaders and at synagogues and churches.
Well, I'm sure that we're going to be able to hear that story going forward, especially how you just presented it in such dramatic fashion. So I'd like for you to talk about the social justice and the societal revolution that's happening now, such as Black Lives Matter and the equality movement that's happening worldwide.
So, I think that there is an awakening that's happening on a worldwide scale. And I know that cannabis presents an opportunity to raise up communities that have been historically over-policed, that have been subject to systemic racism and inequality in many different ways. From the platform that I'm privileged to be able to use, the platform of being part of Holistic Industries, part of this company that cares about the communities, about its patients, about its customers, about its employees. They've given me a platform to speak about this, to raise awareness of how prohibition was injurious to Black communities, and how the legalization can assist in fixing some of that, or at least offering a counter to some of that history of pain and suffering. But it doesn't just happen on its own. We got to do it. We got to do it. So this conference, Black Cannabis Week, is all about raising awareness, and change is going to happen one way or the other. It's just, is it going to be good change or bad change? And what that looks like on a policy level, that gets very complicated. And I got to learn from people, and what I have to share, I'm hopeful will be helpful to others. But together, we're making headway.
Fantastic. Thank you very much, Rabbi James Kahn. Rabbi, can you talk about Liberty Rockville and the naming in particular?
Yeah. It sounds a little corny sometimes, but we really were aiming and are aiming to liberate the cannabis experience. A lot of folks have a narrative when they think of cannabis of, it's going to corrupt our communities. I don't want to store a dispensary near my home, or it will lead to my kids using cannabis at a young age. And a lot of folks are so scared. It's been, prohibition has been so successful. The war on drugs has been so successful that the fear is part of us. And it's so sad to me that fear has kept a lot of people from trying cannabis who could really benefit from it. I mean, that's one of the reasons that I got involved. I remember I was a chaplain at a hospital in Holy Cross Hospital, sorry, suburban hospital here in Montgomery County, Maryland. And I was sitting with a family who was in hospice, and I knew cannabis could help this family. The person who was dying was really dying because he was wasting away and couldn't consume food and didn't have an appetite. But he just looked at me like I was crazy for the idea that he would try cannabis. So I knew that we had a lot of work to do to kind of liberate people from their narrative of how cannabis could be hurtful. So when we open up Liberty stores, these stores are beautiful, they're light filled, they're energized. The staff are empathetic. The medicine starts when you walk in the door, is what I like to say. We really have kind of a hugs over haggling mentality, and that's part of liberating the cannabis experience in our mind.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Dr. Rabbi James Kahn, it's going to be interesting to see how things transgress and not transgress, but move forward, progress with not only cannabis through Liberty Rockville and also through your ministry, so to speak, but also through the social justice platforms that you're working on as well. Thank you so much for your time today, sir. Jacques Howard, the voice of Black Cannabis here. Justice, peace, and humility, folks. Have a great day.
Hi, friends. My name is Rabbi James Kahn, and I serve as the Director of Community Outreach at Holistic Industries, a proud sponsor of today's conference. As some of you may know, we're in the midst of the holiest days of the Jewish calendar year, a period of time referred to as the High Holidays, which begin with the Jewish New Year, also known as Rosh Hashanah, and end 10 days later on Yom Kippur, also known as the Day of Atonement. Speaking at a cannabis conference during the Jewish high holiday season feels fitting to me, not simply because the name references getting high, although there's a lot of puns to be made, but because the high holidays focus on making change in the world. And so does this conference. In fact, I've heard it said that the entire high holiday season exists for no other reason than to remind us that change is possible. Jews have been receiving this reminder every year for millennia. You would think we no longer need it. But considering this holiday season, Yom Kippur and Rosh Hashanah, represent the most well-attended of Jewish services when there's not a pandemic, it appears we do need that reminder. And I think we all need that reminder because as human beings, we forget. We find it pretty easy to forget that change is possible. There's times that we become so defeated, so diminished, deflated, so stuck that we feel like nothing will ever change. And so as a foil, as a counter to this tendency within us, we come together every year and share stories of progress. Some do this by going to high holiday services, and Yom Kippur starts tomorrow night. You're welcome to join me on Zoom. But others do it by attending conferences like CannAtlantic and through attending programs like we've had throughout Black Cannabis Week. And, we gather to hear and to share stories of change. We do this when we're listening to the State of the State addresses. We hear how far we've come. We hear all that's been accomplished on our quest to create a broader industry, a more inclusive industry. And we hear all the places that we're stuck and what's holding us back and the work that still needs to be done. We reflect on the fact that just a few months ago, cannabis was deemed an essential product in dozens of US states. Pennsylvania called it a life-sustaining product, a clear recognition of what so many of us have already known, that this plant that we love is critical to the healthcare and self-care of millions of Americans. The late and great Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg once remarked that real change, enduring change, happens one step at a time. My prayer, my hope for you, for me, for everyone at this conference is that we leave reminded that change is possible and that we have a role to play, that all we need to do is take one step together. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for supporting this event. And thanks for listening.
Rabbi James Kahn, you were one of our speakers and obviously a corporate sponsor and supporter of the CannAtlantic Conference. We just heard you speak a little bit to Black Cannabis about your background. I want to get some rapid reaction about your thoughts about the conference experience, what you liked, what you look forward to next time. So what do you think?
Well, I thought it was great. I thought it was actually I was surprised how little I found the technology to get in the way of the communication. So for me, it actually, it's actually easy to digest in bite sizes, like little bites, because I get to jump into the, and hit play and just, hear a piece and then push pause. It just kind of actually made it a little easier on my end as someone with two kids running around at home, and who's, often goes to conferences and gets like sucked into a couple conversations and then, don't get to hear the rest of things. Yeah. So on that level, it was really cool. And then I just had some great conversations, getting to connect with people that I never get to connect with, just even my friends at Soulful Cannabis.
Yeah.
And then having cause to kind of go deeper with them. And, we often talk about this stuff, but to have, a 30-minute discussion and then some Q&As that are inspired by other people, pushing us to think about what a living wage looks like. It's one thing to say, that we believe the cannabis industry should promote living wages, and that's part of what we mean by social responsibility, is to care for our staff and the labor force, and to make sure there's good labor practices. But what does that mean in the middle of in the middle of rural PA? Is something very different than what it means in Philly to make $15 an hour.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was great. It was great. I was personally just honored to get to participate in it. So,
we got it somehow.
Yeah. I'm impressed you guys pulled it off. I really am.
Thank you. Yeah, we were glad that just being able to do the pre-recordings were so clutch, because that was that allowed us to be able to just release it once the actual conference was done. And also during the conference experience, anyone can go into the expo session and actually click and look at any of the videos that were provided. So that was really cool.
The fact that you juggled all those balls. I mean,
oh no.
I'm texting you in the middle of it, and I'm like, "There's no way he's live," because I see you. You're talking. I'm like, "You're not." You're like, "Yeah, I'm live." I mean, I'm sure I was one of
no.
writing you, but
totally, it was easy to. That's what I like about Hopin. It's very easy to have conversation.
I had never heard of it before. I mean, it kind of was an extension of an idea that I've been toying with in my head, which is looking at a cannabis as, and really because I deal in the world of dispensaries, there's a term called third space. Have you ever heard of this? Like a third space in society? It's I forget the origin of the term, but it's a communal space that isn't one of the traditional ones, but it provides kind of a gathering spot, a place for people to build community, to build trust, to be seen, to feel like some sense of wonder and amazement at what's happening in the state of the states, like kind of like stuff is, there's progress, there's potential, there's hope. I don't know. I felt that sense of that third space, even via digital format, which I was also surprised by. But I really think, as somebody who comes from a religious background and who's witnessing in the 21st century the kind of the debundling of religion, where like some of the core mission of the technology that religion kind of carries is being now, you don't have to go to church or synagogue to get it. There's other places that people are seeking different ways of connecting and being present and having joy and being amazed with each other. And I found the conference to be one of those places. So that's cool. I love cannabis having that role in society.
Yeah, it was certainly nice to be able to make sure that people found it easy to navigate and easy to just consume and sit back and relax and take a passive role without feeling overburdened or overstressed by the technology.
Yeah.
You mentioned you listened to a couple of the state of states. Was there anything intriguing that kind of came out based off of your memory that what you can recall? Anything that stood out? You're like, oh, I need to look into that, or anything like that.
Oh man. Now I'm like, where are my notes here? I'll never find them.
You took notes. Good, nice.
I did. I took some notes on the state of states. Who was I list? There was. It's not coming to me. I'm sorry. I could feel the thoughts just slipping farther back.
Well, when you do notes on the state of, let me know what state.
I'll give you a ring. What's the state of the state? I mean, it's going. I have hope that most of the Mid-Atlantic, that we're really actually maybe that's was that something I heard at the conference, that there's a sense that that we're kind of all connected in this region, this Mid-Atlantic region, and that it's less, one state isn't just an island unto itself. It's impacting the states around it. So to really kind of start looking at, we have to deal with states on their own, because that's the policy and the law and the legislature, and that's what we're stuck with. But the impact of each state is, and what we're learning and how that's being passed from one state to another is very much real. And I think that that's important to recognize as we look forward and look towards, the future of legal cannabis in the Mid-Atlantic region. We're just we're learning from each other. We're not isolated. Yeah.
And I'm looking forward to even bigger and better conversations next year when we think about
absolutely
these conversations
in person.
Hopefully in person. Rabbi James Kahn, really appreciate the support that Holistic Industries brought to the conference. Thank you for being a corporate sponsor and participating, and getting to enjoy some of it. Learning more about it too. So
it was a privilege and a joy, and just thanks for having us.
We'll see you next time.